before we get into the Memphis Belle, if you can touch on, from a manufacturing standpoint, B-17, what does it actually mean? Like a lot of people would assume B means Boeing and 1917 and so on, but that's not true at all.
Yeah, I could see somebody thinking that.
Yeah, and for someone new to the subject, where do we come up with the nomenclature B-17?
Yeah, it's actually there's a formal system that the Army Air Corps came up with to designate aircraft. And you can tell an awful lot about an aircraft, and technically the Memphis Belle is a B-17F-10-BO. And so the most basic nomenclature is the B for bomber. Mm-hmm. So a fighter would be P for pursuit, and attack would be A. So B is the most basic designation for bomber, and then the Army Air Corps, Army Air Forces would assign sequentially numbers. Sometimes the airplanes were never produced, so B-16 was assigned, and when Boeing's Model 299 came along in 1935, they assigned it as the 17th, so B-17, and then further delineating information about it would be the F. So as they made major changes to the aircraft, they would assign a letter to it. So B model, B-17B, B-17C, B-17F in the Memphis Belle. And then it's even further delineated by what's called a block number. So as these airplanes are going down the assembly line, they're not going to just add a change here, a change there. They would take all these changes and make a run of airplanes and call it a block. So block 10, block 20, block 30, that way they could kind of stop and introduce all the changes. It just made manufacturing more efficient and allowed the upgrading and modification of airplanes at the same time. And lastly, the BO, that stands for Boeing. So there were 3 different aircraft companies that built B-17s, 2 of them under license. So by seeing B-17F-10-BO, I would know it's a later model B-17, F model. It's in the block 10, and it was produced by Boeing. And as a matter of fact, the Memphis Belle was produced at the Boeing plant in Seattle.
Right.
And it was accepted by the Army Air Forces on the 15th of July, 1942. And then it wasn't too much longer after that the Memphis Belle crew got the airplane. And of course, when they first got it, it wasn't the Memphis Belle.
Right.
It was a B-17F-10, brand new, coming out of the Boeing factory.
So that's a good point to touch on. Was it common practice for crews to get assigned their aircraft here? Or would they go to Europe and then be assigned the plane over there?
Yeah, at the time that the Memphis Belle crew got their airplane, that was the standard policy. Crew would get an airplane here and fly it over. Later in the war, some of that changed.
Yep.
But the Memphis Belle crew got the airplane here and flew the Memphis Belle over to Europe to start their combat tour.
So we're building a picture here now, made at the Boeing Seattle plant. We have our delivery date. When and where did it become the Memphis Belle?
So it became the Memphis Belle in the United States, and there was some dissent among the crew about what the airplane should be called. Of course, 8th Air Force bombers famously had nose art. Most of them did. And the crew just couldn't decide on what it was going to be. Everybody had their own ideas. So the pilot, Robert Morgan, had a girlfriend from Memphis by the name of Margaret Polk that he was very sweet on. And of course he wanted it to have something to do with her. And he and the co-pilot, Jim Verinis, went to go see a movie called Lady for a Night, and had John Wayne in it, and had this riverboat that was called the Memphis Belle. And as Morgan and Verinis are watching this movie, Morgan thinks, that's what I want. That's what I want the airplane to be called, after my girlfriend. And he was able to convince the tail gunner to agree. And then once he got the tail gunner, and plus he was the aircraft commander, that helped too.
Yeah.
He got the crew to agree to call it the Memphis Belle. And then the nose art came from a George Petty pinup that was in the April 1941 issue of Esquire magazine.
So that woman is not actually a depiction of Margaret Polk. That's a pin-up model.
Correct. So
Ah.
it represents her in spirit.
Yeah.
But the artwork that it came from was a George Petty pinup, and it's a young woman on a phone, and his original model for that was his teenage daughter, and it just says, "I'm the one with the part in the back." That's just a quote. And then what's kind of interesting is that this nose art, we don't know for sure who painted this nose art. It's thought that it was a sign painter in Maine, but that hasn't been confirmed. And I don't know that it ever will be. But what's interesting is the artwork that was done by George Petty is very, very fine and very detailed. And when you look at the actual nose art on the Memphis Belle, it's a bit cruder. And also the figures on both sides differ. The nose art on the left-hand side, she's in a kind of a blue bathing suit with blonde hair. But on the other side, on the right-hand side, she's in a red bathing suit and she's a brunette. And there are some stylistic differences in the two, so they could have been painted at a different time. And to capture those differences, two different specialists in restoration painted the nose art, one on one side and one on the other. And I think they've just done a magnificent job in recreating what was on there.
Yeah. Do we know who painted the Memphis Belle nose art during the war?
Yeah, the original nose artist is something of a mystery. For many years, it had been said that Tony Starcer had painted the nose art. Tony Starcer was this famous nose artist. He painted a bunch of the 91st Bomb Group nose art, great stuff. But it appears that he is not the one who painted that, because that was done in the States. And a researcher by the name of Dr. Friedman down in Memphis came across some evidence that it might have been a sign painter in Maine when the Memphis Belle went to Bangor just before they went over to Europe.
Okay.
And it seems to kind of line up, but Dr. Harry Friedman has not been able to confirm that for sure. So unfortunately, that might be one of the things we just, it'll be lost to time, that we'll never really know for sure.
But when something like that happens, there's always a little bit of intrigue, like there's more to the puzzle. So the Belle is great as it is, and as far as you guys have gone, it's nice to know that there's still a little bit of bait out there.
Oh yeah,
But,
there's still more to research, no
yeah,
doubt. So.
yeah, cool.